Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. You ever feel like you just don't belong? Yeah, that imposter syndrome thing going on there. You're in the room, but how did I get here? I shouldn't be here. I don't know. I should. You get lost in the fact that you're in a place that you just don't feel like you should have been there to begin with, and that is one of the the biggest feelings out of the imposter syndrome. Our next guest, she speaks about imposter syndrome, and she has felt it, and she tries to help people get past it. And she has writings on this, and she has also created a podcast around this, and that podcast, The Power of Investing in People. And she does wonderful work at helping people find their own so they can succeed and keep succeeding because they're showing up as themselves wherever they are. So I want to bring Shā Sparks onto the show, and she is a dynamite person and just a wonderful person to listen to. And if you're listening to her on this show, why don't you go subscribe to her show also, The Power of Investing in People with Shā Sparks, right after you click on our subscribe button so you can keep getting updates from us also. All right, so let's bring Shā onto the show. Welcome to the show, Shā. It's amazing to have a fellow broadcaster on, and one that believes in having fun with it. You don't take yourself too seriously or anything like that. It's like you believe in having fun with it and helping people, and that's really why we started ours. So there's a story behind all this. Why don't we get started with your story?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. So I enjoy talking to you. So this is pretty cool. So yeah.
So my story, like everyone else's, is a long one, right? And so I call it trauma to treasure. So I was in an abusive relationship, and when I got out of that relationship, I was able to heal. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I healed was the way that I talked to myself. And then I changed the way I talk to other people, especially my dad. And then once I started to do that and shifted my language on how I spoke to him, his relationship with me shifted. He became my best friend in the last 5 years of his life. And there were many years before that where we didn't even speak because all he showed me was his anger. He didn't actually know how to express himself, nor did he understand how to have a deep, meaningful conversation other than how's the car running and what's the weather like up there. Even though we were an hour apart, those were the kind of conversations we would have. And so once I started to change the language that I used with me and then with him, it completely shifted, and he was able to really share stories with me that he had never shared before. And unfortunately, some of them were too late, and I wish I had recorded and wish I had, all the things, wish I had recorded them and asked more questions. But I didn't realize he had been drafted to Korea in the Vietnam War. I had heard this story 6 months before he passed away. And up until then, my entire life, I thought he had enlisted. And it was because we really created this safe space of trust with
Mm-hmm.
each other, and that he was really willing to be vulnerable and share some stories that I had never heard. He shared stories about his childhood, and just incredible stories because I chose to heal.
Right. So,
So the tra-
yeah, go ahead. I'm
well, I was
sorry.
going to say, so that's where the trauma transforms into treasure. Is the trauma that I went through allowed me, was a huge wake up call to go, okay, why am I in this situation? Why am I in this relationship? And through my healing journey, it pointed back to how any type of relationship that's like that is familiar. And so even statistics will tell you that people who are in toxic relationships will either go back to that same person. And I think it's somebody just told me recently that it's like 7 or 8 times that they actually go back to this same person. And then once you're away, then you go back to the same person in a different body. So the same attributes in a different person. So it's like, okay, well, how can I break this cycle? What is it that I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I need to know in order to move forward? And that's really where I started my journey from that perspective of, okay, well, there's obviously a whole lot that I don't know. So let's learn that and figure that out and heal from it and be on a journey rather than finding a destination, just be on the journey of healing. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. Um, that's that's kind of interesting because I know in my own life that there is some reflection of that I kept picking my mother or my sister over and over again, and it wasn't until I started digging into myself and figuring things out that I found a different person, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how did the language to yourself change first?
Yeah. So, first of all, I really started to notice what it is I was saying to myself. And it was a huge mind shift change, but I was really being mindful of the words, being aware of the words that I was saying to me, the things that when I would look in the mirror, the voice that would go on in my head, the things that if I did something that was um like maybe I accidentally ran a red light or something, and the conversation that went through my mind of, oh my god, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that, and I could have been in an accident, what if this would have happened, what if that would have happened, all these different things that we say to ourselves that we're not even aware of most of the time. We're just going through life on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
It was really being able to be present with and be mindful with the language I was using. And I started to notice a pattern, that pattern was very hurtful. It was never helpful. It was disempowering. And I started journaling during this. Well, I was journaling before, but part of what I started to journal was what I call a brain dump. And I just started to write down all those mean and nasty and evil things that I said about myself onto paper. And the reason I did that is because it's to capture my own thoughts. Like I said, most of the time we were on autopilot. I know I was, and I didn't even realize some of the horrific things I was saying to myself. And I know we would never, I mean, most of the time, if we're not a psychopath, we would never say this to another person.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't intentionally hurt another person with these words. And yet we're intentionally or unintentionally hurting ourselves with this language. So once I held my thoughts captive and really wrote it all down in this brain dump in this journal, it's when I really noticed, like, wow, I am really mean to myself. So what if we look at this as those thoughts are not true, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's not true, then what would be the opposite that might be true? that I can replace it with. Because whenever we remove something, like if you are taking away something, then what happens? Most of the time, dirt fills back in. If you remove dig a hole, dirt eventually moves back in. So in order to
Yeah.
remove something, you have to replace it with something else. So I knew that I wanted to replace those thoughts with something that was going to empower me, something that was going to be helpful, something that was going to help me move forward, that was going to be a positive shift for me rather than to continue to hold me back. So I look at this brain dump of all of these evil, nasty things that I would say to myself. And I said, okay, what is the opposite? And so then I made a list of the opposite of those things. And then I would write the words, the two most powerful words in the English language, I am, in front of those. And I did this so that it was a conscious decision. And I'm saying that because, again, it is a decision to heal. It is a decision to make these types of changes. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that whenever I had noticed that I was speaking poorly to myself, I had this inner negative dialogue going, that anytime I noticed, I would call it out loud. So if you are near me, it might look a little strange, like, oh, that lady's talking to herself. But I honestly didn't care because I was like, no, I want my brain to catch this, that what I'm doing is hurtful.
Right.
Excuse me. What I'm doing is hurtful. So I would literally, when I would say, oh, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not, rich enough, I'm not skinny enough, whatever things I would tell myself, I would say, hold up. Wait, that's a lie. I am pretty. I am smart. I am intelligent. Mm-hmm. I am enough. Period. So that I was able to then reprogram what I was actually thinking, how my brain was actually wired. And I have several people who say, well, affirmations don't work. Well, for me, it did. And when you use it in this way, when you're literally taking that action to call it out, mm-hmm. you are rewiring your brain. I've been hypnotized one time to quit smoking. And one of the things they do is they suggest that anytime that you see someone or see a cigarette or see someone smoking or see a cigarette ad or anything like that, in your mind, you go, oh, that's gross. And I said, no, my mind is not that brilliant. I need to speak it out loud so it really hears it. So I would literally say wherever I was, if I saw someone smoking, saw a cigarette, saw smoke come out of a window, if I was in a car and saw the smoke come out of the window in the car in front of me or in traffic, I would say, that's disgusting. Ew. And what happens is that your brain starts to pick up that programming. Right. Rather than the one that you're actually listening to. So that is why this way that I did this, rewriting my brain, actually use the affirmations. It really helped me go, okay, I am not that thing that I keep telling myself. So I'm able to move forward in a different way.
So you, not only were you, because I know a lot of people, they say it inside their head, but when your senses start to pick up on it, then it gets into a different part of the brain, right?
Absolutely. And then you start saying it out loud. It anchors that what you just heard was not true. And it anchors what you're saying is true.
Right.
And when you're, again, it's filling that void back up. Once you're removing something, you're filling it back up with something positive.
Right.
So, yeah, it's the importance of anchoring.
Yeah, basic laws of physics. We can't have a vacuum. Something's going to fill it.
Yeah.
So you were able to overcome a lot of hurdles that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So
absolutely.
Was it Would you? And you're saying that that's also what gave your dad the space to be able to share with you the stories.
So, one of the books that I read was called Women Who Love Too Much, and it should really be the title should be People Who Love Too Hard, because I recommend it to men too who are my clients because of how impactful it is. So one of the things that they talk about is how when you're in any kind of relationship, in a could be a business relationship even, but if someone is toxic, okay, there is someone in your past, in your childhood, that is typically has these types of traits, characteristics, and your human desire to make that right for you as an adult, you find relationships like that. So it could be a boss, could be a partner.
Right.
And so what and you're unconsciously doing it, but it's your human desire to fix that. So what was happening is when I started to notice, when I was reading this book, I started to notice again the pattern of, oh my gosh, my ex-boyfriend did this. He was manipulative. He wasn't good with money. He was, very cold and emotionally unavailable. Well, that describes both my mom, my dad, and my grandma in three things. And it's because that type of behavior is familiar, right? So then when my dad then goes to say to me, mind you, he would say things to me like, tell me that he wants me to do something. But it was said in a way that was actually manipulating. And so I said to him, wait a minute, Dad, are you asking me to do this task and okay if I say no? Or are you telling me to do it and expecting me to do it, even though I may not want to? And he's like, what? And I said, are you manipulating me? And he was like, like, I don't even know what that means. And I said, great. What it means is that it sounds like you're trying to ask me to do something, but yet you're going to be really mad at me if I don't do it. But you're not asking me, you're telling me. And he thought, wow, I don't even know if I'm doing that or not. So I just started to say every time that he would do it, I would say, okay, Dad, so what I'm hearing is that you're trying to manipulate me right now. So what is it that you actually want to ask me? What is it that you're asking for? What need are you trying to get met right now? And just by able to say that to him, he was like, huh, well, I never thought about it like that. What I really want is to be able to, just have you do this task for me so I don't have to do it. So that frees up my time. Okay, great. So do you have a time limit on when it needs to be done? So then I can ask another question and not feel that pressure. Like what he was telling me or trying to get me to do was I needed it now, because that's normally how my dad operated. He needed things yesterday, right? And so I thought, okay, so now by asking him that question, it gives me permission to ask another question like, oh, so are you okay with the timeline of it gets done when I get it done rather than when you want it done? And he was like, oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Whenever you have time. And it was like, whoa, that was a different perspective.
See, that's way different because you ever notice that that term ASAP?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, it's very vague. It means whenever it's possible, but they're actually trying to say immediately because I have this need and I need you to fill it now. But they use ASAP instead.
Agreed.
So our society is full of this manipulation.
Yes. Yeah. And truthfully, we don't know that we're doing it, right?
Right.
Right. So I learned that, and both my parents. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them dearly, but both of my parents were sarcastic. So they were expressing themselves in a way that was trying to be funny, but you could hear that it was not really funny, and it was actually some meanness coming through. And I learned later that sarcasm is anger in a clown suit. And when I heard that, I went, got it. So now going to my mom, I'm like, Mom, so I get that I hear that you're being, you're unhappy with this and that you're being funny, but I don't think you're actually laughing about this. Who are you really mad at? And she didn't understand that either until I explained it. I'm like, well, it sounds like what you're trying to do is express your dislike in someone. So, or your disagreement with someone, or your disgruntledness with someone, disappointment. So let's talk about that rather than you trying to be funny. And then it comes back around like a backhanded compliment. She would do that as well. And so then it was, she was actually upset with my brother. And so I'd say to her, okay, so what is it that you want me to do with that information? And would you be willing to have that conversation with him rather than me? Because by having the conversation with me, I can't do anything about it unless you want me to, unless you ask me to have that conversation with him. But it would be more meaningful to him if it came from you.
Yeah, I could see that.
And again, just by trial and error, I learned all these techniques. And she was like, wow, I had no idea that that's what I was doing or that I was even mad. She didn't even recognize that she was not just mad, she was like resentful.
Wow.
And once she was able to have that conversation, she was freed of it.
Wow. That's just a cool thing to have happen, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just by calling out a lot of the things that we're doing and a lot of things that we're thinking and that what we're saying, when you call them out of like what they actually are, like, and gaslighting wasn't the word back when I was using manipulation, but gaslighting was huge in my home. Didn't even know that was a thing. So when you're able to say and not point it out as in you are gaslighting me, but asking it in an honest, genuine, authentic question of, are you trying to gaslight me? Is that your intention here? Because that could very well be someone's intention. And if they are willing to communicate it back to you, they might not even know that they had phrased it in that language.
Interesting. So, do you teach this stuff?
I do actually. Yeah, I teach it, I coach it. That's what I work with my clients and my group, my men's group that I work with.
Men's group. Wow. So, how many men do you actually coach at a time?
In my men's group, I do 8. I limit it to 8, and I have 2 groups. But I you take them as one-on-one clients as well. But I don't work with any more than that because it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's so profound to see the difference when you just point things out like, well, did you ask them? And people will swear up and down they actually asked another person. But when it comes down to it, when I keep asking, like, are you sure? Like, are you 110% sure? They're like, oh, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe I told them. And truthfully, some of the men that I work with are prior military. So they're used to that giving orders kind of mindset. So when we step back and go, okay, well, now you're home, and now your husband, now your parent, and now your son, to who you are, related to, you're not the general anymore. You're not the sergeant or the chief. So let's remove that rank and that identity that you are tied into, and let's focus on who you want to be now, who you get to create this space in your life, which again, if you come from a background that's so structured, creating something is like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Creating. Yeah. So it's just really, really rewarding for me because, again, if my dad had had these tools and skills and language back, when he got out of the army, he would be able to have been a different father, a different husband to my mom, and just been able to show up differently in the world.
Right. Very cool. That's because I did spend some time myself attached to the U.S. Armed Forces, and I'll be totally honest with you. My story was that I washed out because I fell 200 feet off a cliff,
Mm,
and the string that I was attached to ripped my back apart. So
sure.
they dumped me off at the curb, which in some respects was like a pretty cool favor that they did to me because of some of the things I was being taught. I look back on them now and I'm like, oh, well, that's just uncool stuff. And there was one time, one of the things that I was taught that I actually scared the living crap out of my kids.
Mm,
We were in a city we weren't really familiar with, and someone went to. He actually tried to attack us, but it was my response to that attack. It scared the living crap out of my kids, and I'm like, I will always be like, oh, that was just bad. There's a way to defend, and then there's defense, and then there's counterattack. I went counterattack.
mm. Yeah.
So,
So what I'm hearing is you reacted.
right.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we are used to being in survival mode, which being in the military you're in survival mode,
Hmm.
you don't think about responding or what a response would be. You automatically go into reacting. And sounds like it was beneficial, hopefully, for you.
Well, it taught. I learned a lesson from it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
That yeah, there is a difference between, like you're saying, responding to something or defense in this case, um, and and reacting and because I thought I was just simply being the guy in the relationship, and I wasn't just being the guy in the relationship in that instance. I wasn't being the protector. I was being a very aggressive. Um, I can't even think of all the words that, but in the long run, it turned out that it scared the kids, and I shouldn't. I was just as scary as the person trying to mug us.
Mm.
Well, that's not good, right?
Well, you can say that it's not good, and in my heart of hearts, I want to reframe that for you that you possibly saved their lives and yours.
I did do that,
Yeah.
but uh, it's that I didn't want them remembering it as being afraid of me. It's okay that they're afraid of the attacker because they were the attacker, but I
Right,
didn't
right.
want them being afraid of me.
Sure. Sure.
Oops.
Oh, oops.
We need to edit this for a second. Hold on.
Okay.
And we're back in 5, 4, 3. Okay. So you would, if I was working with you, you would teach me the skills so that I would have reacted differently, and my kids would remember. Yes, they would remember it as a scary event, but they wouldn't remember that event where I became the scary person.
Maybe. Or maybe it would be just really having a conversation with your children after that. And you can still have that conversation of identifying the difference between what you did, what the attacker did, and what your intentions were. I think often we often don't think about what someone else's intentions are. We just assume that everything is done perfect and on purpose. So when you're coming from a place of, wait, kids, we gotta like rehash this. Like we need to discuss this. Like I want you to know that my intention is to be the protector for you. And I did, I might not have done it correctly. However, I did it at least in a way that protected us,
Right.
protected you. And that's where my heart was. Because I believe at the end of the day, more than anything, that we have to teach people that we are not our behavior if we're intentional about that. Again, there are tons of psychopaths that are not going to be intentional about that. But we have to teach people that we are not our behavior so that what you saw is not who I am. Who I am is a father that loves you so much that I am protecting you. And what do you think I should have done? Like bring them into the conversation. Like what else could I have done? And again, when you come from this place of having a conversation about it, of give and take and discussion, there is no right or wrong answer. It's really about just being able to co-create an outcome that is not going to happen ever, but it's just having that conversation. And then it might relieve some tension that your children are having, like, oh my gosh, I need to be scared of dad now because I never know if he's going to, blow up like a ticking time bomb. But the truth is like, no, you're prepared to blow up like a ticking time bomb because that's how you were trained and, from your experience in the military. And you can explain that as well.
Right.
And what people often do is just blow things over, like, oh, they'll be fine. And they sweep it under the rug, like, oh, they'll be fine. And they might. But if you're feeling like the energy has shifted between you guys, then that is an invitation for you to have a dialogue about it, to have that conversation of give and take and to let them know what your intentions were. And maybe they feel scared enough that they go, hey, you know what, Dad, I would actually feel safer if I took some self-defense classes now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. So great, let's get you into, Krav Maga or Kung Fu or, whatever is in your neighborhood that you want to try. That would at least prepare them so that they are in a different situation. They are able to, instead of the counterattack, like you said, they're able to be able to react in a way that is automatic, which is what you did, by the way.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah. I trained with Krav Maga for a year.
Yeah, that's what I took.
And you have muscle memory. I mean, we have muscle memory in all the things that we've done, every sport we've ever done, anything that we've done, right? So when you're in that position, there wasn't time to think. You went into automatic response, automatic reaction.
Well,
right? And that's what we're taught in Krav Maga as well.
Yeah, I was
you go into automatic.
Krav Maga is like I took it with. I took some of those classes with a friend of mine, and it was just like being back in the armed forces, like react, go, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I came home one time. I had so much fun in training one time that when I came home, I had like bruises up and down my neck. I had a black eye, and my wife's like, "Did you get attacked?" I was like, "Oh no, I had this really great time in martial arts classes." Like, well, were you the beating pole? I was like, and she finally, she saw, I forget, there was some TV show we were watching, and the Israeli operative reacted like that, and the violence to because it's Israeli self-defense, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and she's like, is that what you were taking? I'm like, uh huh. It's like it's a lot of fun.
It is. It really is.
So, but you created this program. It's called Alpha.
Spark your alpha.
Spark Your Alpha. Yeah. Hey, that rhymes with your name.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, of course, Sparks, right? So I use Spark Your Alpha, and Alpha is an acronym, and it stands for awareness, leadership, purpose, hope, and alignment. And it is things that we never think about, that self-awareness key and that identity that we attach to ourselves, all the way to awareness of opportunities that we may not ever have even thought about. For instance, like having a conversation with your family about this one incident. Leadership on what you value as a leadership, and being able to now create how you get to show up. Right. And what does that look like? And how was it different than what you were doing before? And do you want to continue down the same, or do you want to, again, have that conversation to maybe co-create something different? Maybe it's with your team. You want to be able to co-create a leadership way of being with your entire team of what it is that they need you to be as a leader.
Yeah.
So your family, what it is that you need to be as a leader.
Yeah, right. Right, I got that. So let me ask you this: your leadership values. What is it that you value out of leadership?
Great question. So I value honesty, integrity, and trust mostly, more than anything. And integrity is, to me, is you're going to follow through. You said you would do it, and so you're going to do it. And even if you don't do it, you are communicating why it's not being done.
Right.
So that's a huge thing for me for the integrity. Honesty is always golden, I believe. Transparency rides along with that. Vulnerability rides along with honesty. And trust is something that's built. And I think people, again, forget that. It's a lot of times they go, oh, well, you trust me, right? And I'm thinking, how would I trust you? We just started talking, and it's something that builds over time. And it goes both ways.
Right. Well,
and
if you have to use those building blocks, they come with integrity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Words out of my mouth. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like a wonderful program. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And a lot of what you said about, because leadership for me isn't just barking orders, it's the follow through and the collaboration of ideas, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Because barking orders, that's just being bossy. Leadership means a lot more. And you also project a lot of that through, because I like the name of your podcast also. And by the way, when I introduced you into the show, you probably heard me say, hey, if you're subscribing to this show, make sure you subscribe to her show.
Thank you.
So, because I subscribed to it, and I was like, the first couple episodes I listened to, I was like, wow. I was like,
thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And we're all we've become kind of friends on Instagram also.
Yes, for sure. I love that.
So if you go to if you're on Instagram, if you search for Shā Sparks, you will find Shā Sparks.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's under I am Shā Sparks, but yeah, and I post all my podcast stuff
Yeah.
on there, that one as well.
I think you're right. Officially, it is I am, but that's how I found you was that. Um, and again there your ideas come through again. Um, it's it's consistent, very,
Hmm.
which is cool.
Thank you.
Another thing I also value in leadership. So,
Ah,
um,
yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Um, so how did you? What part of you did you find in you that makes you so creative like that?
You cut out. What did you say? Can you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. What makes you so creative? Did you
What
created
makes
the program? You created
ah
the podcast, um, and you also I noticed that some of the things that you put up on Instagram, they're very original. They're not just
mm.
like copy paste of some inspirational quote thing. Or if they are, they're very obscure quotes that I like. That's got to be hers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, where my creativity came from? Well, it came hereditarily. First of all, my grandmother was an artist. She would travel to Europe and Hawaii and take photographs and come back and take a painting class or a watercolor class or a pastels class and and make them, draw them, paint
Hmm.
them, the scenes of the architecture, the whatever of Europe or Hawaii. So I loved going right along with her and being able to, she would set up an easel right next to her and teach me what she had just learned. And I'm, between 5 and 7 at this point, and I would just be having fun with my grandma. And then, she enrolled me in dance class. And I think dance is a really great creative self expression. And then growing up, my dad could sit down and say, Dad, I need this drawn for art class, or I need this drawn for a project. He'd go, okay. And he'd take a pen and a back of a cereal box and open it up and boom, 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 boom. And next thing you know, he has it drawn out, like no big deal. And then my mom was very crafty and creative in everything that she did. So then when I got into college, I went for computer science because that makes sense, right? And so I learned very quickly that that was not my forte. That was not for me. That stifled everything that I am. And I took a personality test and I scored really high in the arts and science. And so I went into cosmetology. And I was a hairstylist for my entire career of 29 years. And I'm only 30, so I don't even know how that works. But so I did that and was really able to have fun and express myself and I color my hair and I put on makeup and I wear clothes and jewelry and all the things. And it's just part of my DNA
Yeah.
being creative. And so when I was going through the healing process, I really had some amazing, amazing, amazing hair clients that I would share with them what I was learning about myself and what I was doing about it, what the action I was taking with it. And then they would go to their lives for 4 to 6 weeks and then come back and they would say, oh my gosh, because of what you told me, I tried that out with my boss or my team or my parent or my kid or my spouse, and my relationship changed.
Wow.
And then they would say, have you considered being a coach? Have you considered being a motivational speaker or starting a podcast or writing a book? Have you considered doing these things? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of. But in the back of my mind, there was that inner negative dialogue that I was still working on that was like, absolutely not. You can't do that. That imposter syndrome that would show up. And it's like, who do you think you are? You're not qualified to do all those things. And so I thought, well, okay, what if I borrow their confidence in me and say, well, if they believe in me, maybe there's something that I don't see. So what does it look like to be qualified in those things? And so I seeked that out and was able to go through, speaking boot camps and podcast classes and coaching training for years, and just all these and different classes, constantly educating myself over the past 14 15 years, and really being able to go, okay, the more I educate myself, the more creativity flows, and I trust creativity. So I journal. So a lot of times in just a journal, a podcast episode will flow out of me, or an Instagram post will come to me, or something that I want to say. Like, one of the things that I've just recently been saying, and it came out of just journaling, is when we learn something new, it becomes knowledge, but it's not until we share that knowledge, then it becomes wisdom.
Very cool. That's very true too.
And thank you. And it's not like I went and go, let's think of a quote about knowledge and wisdom. No, it was in journaling that it just flowed out of me. And I'm a very spiritual person. So for me, journaling is basically a letter to God. And so it was just being able to get it out, and it flows easily. So yeah, that my creativity's, it's innate. It was born into me.
The name of your book?
The name of my first book is called How to Get Your Voice Back. And I have a co-author book called Visionistas. And now I facilitate co-author books called Firestarters Book Project. And the first one was How to Be a Spark of Hope in the Midst of Change. And the second one, we are accepting connections and invitations to other creative thought leaders. It is called How to Rekindle Your Kindness.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, we're starting to run out of time.
Yes. Well, it's been amazing to be on your show. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. So, best ways to get a hold of you. We mentioned your Instagram.
Yes. Instagram on all social media is Shā Sparks, or I am Shā Sparks. And I have a website called ShāSparks.com. That's ShASparks.com. And my podcast is The Power of Investing in People podcast. You can listen to that on any podcast platform, and including YouTube as well.
And tell them to subscribe.
Yes, and you subscribe. Feel free to subscribe to me on all those platforms and YouTube. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And let me know what you think. I always love feedback. I love to hear comments. I love to get DMs from people. I even have a podcast website called ShāSparksPodcast.com. There's a place you can leave a voicemail if you want.
Yeah.
And tell me what you take away from it, or what feedback that you got, or, insights or something. I love those. In fact, I just did an episode yesterday where I read some reviews and some testimonies from my coaching clients. It was pretty powerful.
Very cool. Yeah, I was a little nervous the first time I responded to one of your posts, and I was like, oh, she's never going to respond back to me on this. And I got it I got a response back in a couple hours on Instagram. I was like, oh, she's personable too. Anyway, so everybody go check out Shā Sparks. It's ShASparks, and you'll have a wonderful time with her. Take her your alpha program, and Spark Your Alpha. Is that what it was, right?
Yes, Spark Your Alpha.
Yeah, and there's Shā has a lot to say and a lot to teach people, so connect with her. All right. And at this time, I am going to say thank you, everybody, for listening. And find that subscribe button wherever you may find it, because on different platforms, it's in a different spot. So, all right. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.